Alrighty, looks like we're live here. Just wanted to try this format out. I haven't really done many live streams. I did a quick one a while back for my study with me's, kind of to test out the actual mechanics of doing a live stream. So I apologize if there's anything weird with this live stream, as I'm still pretty new to it. But I wanted to cover just a couple things real quick, mainly about this new announcement with Robinhood options. Oh, and by the way, as I kind of go through this, if you have questions about anything, doesn't have to be about this topic, anything about what I'm doing, things about the markets, investing, whatever it happens to be, definitely let me know. You can put it in the chat and I'll be sure to try and answer it before the end of this. And I also have a couple questions that people have sent in the past. Eventually I'll have a community tab once I reach 1,000 subscribers. Almost there. We're at 965 as of this morning. So once I hit 1,000 subscribers, I'll have a community tab and we'll be able to do more question and answer sessions, since I'll be able to actually collect them before heading off to a live stream. But anyways, so here is this announcement from Robinhood. They are now doing options. They allow you to trade options that expire that day. So if you wanted to buy options that expired in a few hours, you theoretically could do that using Robinhood now, which just adds to this whole narrative of short-term speculation, which is really just a nice way of saying gambling, and going to the casino using the markets to do that in a way. Since you're buying options that are going to expire that day, options expire worthless if they're out of the money when they expire. So you have a high chance of losing all of your money if you're buying an option that might be just out of the money and you're hoping that you can make a quick profit if it moves within a few hours. And there's no way to predict what a stock's going to do in just a couple hours, or a few minutes even, in less than an hour, or even a day or two. You never really know what's going to happen. A lot of things change. Emotions are what drive things in the short term, and you never know how someone's going to wake up, how the market is going to wake up in the morning, and how it's going to feel. So it's just adding to this whole euphoria around the market. I know we had that pullback mainly in the high-flying tech stocks of the market. We had that happen a little while ago, but it seems to have recovered pretty swiftly, and which isn't too much of a surprise given how much money has been injected into the system, as well as how much margin is in here, which I wanted to kind of show as well. Margin still at an all-time high compared to market values. Actually, I think just period, there's never been this much margin ever. So margin debt is debt attached to stocks, and when you have more debt attached to stocks, just like really anything, it exposes the system to more risk, because if stock values fall for whatever reason, you can see what actually happened at this recent crash. Once stock values fell, which are represented by the blue line, the S&P 500, when those fell, margin values fell quickly too, because people have to pay off their margin. So it kind of creates this feedback loop where stocks will fall, and then people will need to sell those stocks to pay their margin, and then more people are selling the stocks to pay their margin, and as there's more selling going on, it drives this spiral downwards. And margin in itself is a good tool when used responsibly, but when it's used irresponsibly, or when people are really doing this sort of risk-seeking adventure that has kind of been caused over the last really year or two, well, actually for quite some time now, with the Fed lowering interest rates continuously and wanting to spur more spending and investment into things, it's done that by making debt a lot cheaper. That includes margin debt. And just when you have this whole narrative of margin debt becoming cheaper, risk-taking being more appetizing because the quote-unquote risk-free rate, like treasury bills right now, pay you basically nothing. The 10-year treasury has ticked up to like 1.5% interest. So if you wanted to make that on an investment, it's practically how do they say it? It's, instead of being a risk-free rate, it is return-free risk, since you're making hardly anything. But there is a chance that you actually don't get paid back if something happens, or you're going to get paid back with worthless dollars because of inflation. So that's your risk there. It's not as though anything is truly risk-free. There's always a risk, and the risk is opportunity cost and what you're actually getting paid back in. But anyways, I just wanted to point this out, since it is a bit of I think unnerving is the right word. You have all this debt being flooded into the system. You have little platforms like Robinhood offering these the ability to trade options in the same day that are expiring, is that really useful? Is that really going to move the needle in the entire markets? No, it's not. However, I think it's just indicative of the sort of environment we see ourselves in now with the market and with the stock market in particular, and all the risk seeking that is currently going on. Now, with that, I wanted to open it up for questions, and I did get a couple questions before this. Let me just switch over to this view. Hey, I'm getting pretty good at this. So I did have a couple questions. If anyone wants to put anything in the chat, they can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, someone asked recently, since I recently took the bar exam and just started my legal career. Technically, I'll be an attorney only once I'm licensed, but I'm working at the firm that I will be an attorney at so long as I pass the bar. But someone asked, any advice for someone wanting to start a legal career? And yes, I can certainly offer at least my perspective on it. It's certainly not for everyone, the legal profession. It's challenging in certain areas and frustrating in others, but you can kind of say that about just about any career. And not every skill set is going to be well suited for it. However, there are a lot of areas in the law that you can go into, so that keeps it pretty flexible, I guess you could say. There are lots of different areas you can go for. Me, I really liked real estate, and I knew I wanted to do something in real estate, and being a real estate attorney is what I'm going to be doing. So it kind of fit my interests well. Maybe you don't care about real estate, you want to do something else, you want to do corporate law, you want to do litigation, going to court, whether that be at the appellate level, the trial level, criminal defense, prosecution, civil defense, and pretty much anything you really want to do. There are lots of different areas within the law. So in that sense, you have a lot of flexibility. So my first word of advice would be try to think of something that you want to get out of law school. What is your interest that you're going for? You don't have to have a career set in mind, but you should have some sort of plan. When you go really to any school, it's not just law school, have some sort of plan in mind and a purpose for as to why you're doing it, because it's a big time effort and often a big financial effort as well if you can't get a sizable scholarship, which thankfully that is an option. If you play your cards right, you can get a full ride to school. I was able to do that. I don't say that to brag. I say that because it's possible, and it made the decision to go to law school a lot easier because I didn't go to a top school. And the reason I didn't go to a top school, one, I didn't actually get into one. I didn't apply to many because I wanted to get a solid financial package. And you can't really do that at a lot of the big schools, barring somewhat of a miracle. And you got to be a top tier student. And I was a pretty good student throughout my academic career, but you got to be way up there. So if you are, then great. That's a great option to have. If you don't have that option, I didn't really, since I didn't actually get into one. So you can find ways to mitigate your risk that way by lowering the tuition costs. So look into that. There are some options there. But either way, like I said, have a purpose before going into law school. And if you have that purpose, then you can find a way to actually make something out of it. And you'll have a better idea when you're actually picking classes and networking with people, who you want to focus your time on and what classes you really want to focus on. Obviously, you want to do good in all your classes, ideally, but you're going to put more effort towards the classes that interest you. So try to figure out what that interest is before you go into it. That can be a little bit harder than you might expect if you don't already have an interest in mind. So that was a good question. If you have any others about it, definitely feel free to follow up. And then I also got one recently about my thoughts on NFTs. These are the non-fungible tokens that are ripping through the crypto world right now, where you can basically sell sort of like a piece of digital art is what it's often being used for now. And there's just been some seemingly ludicrous valuations on things. So my thoughts on NFTs, they're not super mature yet. I haven't done much research, but from my layman's understanding of it, I think the technology and the sort of mechanics of it are super promising, and I think are really useful for something like an artist, a musician, for just the intellectual property space in general, and the ability to easily track what's going on with your book, with your whatever, since you have the ability to attach something to that, what they call smart contract. And on that smart contract, you can attach a permanent royalty or something. So in the aftermarket of whatever this piece of art or intellectual property is, you can get the money, you can get a share of that as well, which is a pretty cool feature on NFTs. So I think that it by itself is a really, really cool feature that I think could be very powerful in the future if the NFT sort of framework on the blockchain goes more mainstream. But right now, I think some of the very highly speculative stuff with people selling tweets and selling pieces like little pieces of digital art. I've never been a huge fan of paying a ton of money for any art, even like in-person physical fine art. Now, when you make it a digital art, it just feels even less like there's real value to it. But people like showing off. People have emotional values attached to things, so I could see it there. I'm not a huge fan of all the speculation going into it, though, but I do think the ability to attach something to it, maybe that's you just get this token, but really what you're getting out of value is an experience to be with your favorite artist or to somehow contribute to an artist's piece of work. That, I think, is a promising technology and hopefully can be really powerful and a useful tool in the future. So those are my thoughts on NFTs. Those are the only big questions I got recently. I wanted to see any question. Let me see how I can actually look at the chat. And try to figure out how to actually pull up the chat. That would be helpful. Well, I don't actually know how to pull up the chat feature on my end. Let me see here. Well, it doesn't look like there's any additional questions. So for the future, if you guys want to see more of this type of live stream feature, I know this was kind of on short notice. I was just kind of trying out the format and also seeing if I could actually run a live stream properly. And I think I did it all right. So hopefully that's the case. But again, if you guys have questions for the future, I'll try to do this more regularly if there's a demand for it. And certainly once I get my community tab up and running, I can actually start collecting questions a lot more easily. But if you leave them on videos, I'll definitely try to answer them anyways in the comments. But if I think it would make for a good piece in a video, then I'll definitely use it that way. But otherwise, thanks for tuning in, and until next time.